Start recording. Start recording. We are recording. What's up, my brother? Good to see you.
Hey, always a pleasure seeing you. Always a pleasure seeing you on my feed, and then when you hit me up to collab, like, I'm so giddy and excited. So let's do it.
Yeah, man. I think we both got that, like, that fantastical sci-fi superhero ninja magic wizard energy flowing through us, and it represents itself in different ways, but it's like the super spy space ninja wizard in me recognizes the super spy space ninja wizard in you. And yeah, man, I'm always called to drop in about it. And I think on this topic that we wanted to talk about, it's one of the things that makes me reach out to you most over a lot of people, is that you really do a good job of really representing the truth of who you are. And I first started noticing it when you started making the anime posts, and I'm like, fuck yeah, man, this is like what I wish I was doing, but for some reason like was holding back on. And that example, and as somebody who like practices that muscle of living their truest authentic self regardless of what the world thinks and judges, it like really resonated with me to see you doing that. So yeah, that's kind of the topic we're going to drop in on today, if you want to break it down and explain your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, okay, so we live in a world, and take everything I say with a grain of salt to anybody who's listening to this, but we live in a world where from a very young age we're encouraged to follow paths that were already built for us. And at first as children, at least for me, like I was rewarded for being myself. But then at a certain age, it's like, okay, now you're this age, time to be a big kid. Whatever the fuck that means. And we start getting punished by teachers, some people parents, some people cousins, family members, friends, for shining our light. And as children, we start to believe that when we shine, we hurt others or something like that. So therefore, I must not shine. I must self-sacrifice so that other people can win. And in adulthood, it shows up as like, when we do start to express ourselves, it's often, honestly, like if I was to take off the filter, it's often like just a copy and paste of someone we admire.
Let's take the filter off, bro. That's what we're practicing,
boring,
right?
It's like there's so many life coaches out there that are either like the Tony Robbins archetype or like the Austin mala bead wearing Tulum going archetype. And I'm like, okay, but where's the ones that are like pop star coaches? Where are the ones that have like Megan Thee Stallion energy? Where are the anime obsessed ones? Why is everybody filtering through this path? And like my theory is shame. My theory is, okay, because who I really am won't be accepted, won't be loved, will push people away. And a nuance here that I want to give is, I think that that's true. Like, yes, you will be rejected when you're being your true self. You will like have people that you thought were your best friends like suddenly hate you.
And and sorry to interrupt. Please continue. I'm gonna
No, go ahead.
let you finish.
Actually, go ahead. I want this to feel like a conversation.
There is that like deep like fear of rejection, and then I also think there is a subtler layer to it where it's just, oh, no one's gonna resonate with it. Like maybe I won't get rejected, but no one's going to want to hire me as a coach because of this.
Yeah,
maybe I won't
understand.
Yeah, no one's going to feel the way I feel about this thing, and it's just going to fall on deaf ears. And that's like, that is almost, that's like almost another layer, because you can get past that fear where it's like, fuck it, I don't care what people think, which is like kind of where I'm at. But what I find is then the next block is like, oh, but they won't like that. They won't feel it. They won't resonate with it. Because it's like, fuck if they don't like it, but I still want to put out something that people feel called to.
I love what you just said, because there's this very clever story that I find that the mind says. And it happens to me sometimes to this day. And it will until you're human. There's always another layer, right? Like you're human, it's gonna keep happening. But it's so subtle and it's so clever and it's almost sexy sounding. It's like, oh, like this is too deep for people, or oh, this is too niche for people. Like I won't be understood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like whenever I've started adopting this practice, Mateo, where whenever I notice my brain very cleverly exiling me, like, oh, I'm too spiritual, or I'm too much of a weeb, like people just won't get it. I'm like, okay, brain, that's what I most need to share so that I can actually be seen in my fullness. Because, and at the same time, like, I do also want to speak to the very real nuance that when you are shining, people will vilify you. Like, I've lost friends that I thought were my fucking brothers and sisters that when I really started showing these parts, they were like repulsed by me. And that hurts. And to this day, I still have friends that I lost years ago that when they come up in my mind, I feel that sting in my heart of like, oh, like what happened, you know? And these really sticky moments in life where that darkness comes up, that pain of like being rejected, which by the way, like as humans, like we have nervous systems that evolve much slower than human technology. And right now we're in a stage of human evolution where we have access to what feels like infinite communities through the internet. And even locally, even if you didn't have the internet, there's like what feels like infinite, like you could spend all your life trying to explore all the communities locally, and there will always be something new that you haven't explored. So like, we factually speaking, if we do get rejected from our original tribe, like we have other tribes, but our nervous system evolved to exhibit a fight, flight, freeze, or fawning response that feels like death when we feel rejected. Because back then, before all this technology, before society was the way that it was, tribes killed each other, and tribes, like, if you were rejected from one, you would die. You would either get killed by your own tribe or you would die of hunger, because humans evolved to be like co-creators. At least that's what I've resonated with. And there's this very real thing that happens when we start taking up space where it feels like death inside our body. Like the world is ending when we lose a friend, or when someone breaks up with us for being ourselves, or when we get a hater on a social media post. And ironically, paradoxically, like human nature is so fucking paradoxical, leaning into that death is what creates like the evolution, the next level, the level up in the avatar of this body that I'm in the video game character of Carlos and the video game character of Mateo. Like we level up when we purposefully seek out that death.
Yeah.
When we purposefully like, you know, like me, being a gay man, like literally just by being born, like I'm already the villain to like a huge population of the planet. Just by existing, just by breathing and life into this body and sharing my opinion online, dude, it's common for me. Like I've gotten to the point where like when I get haters to my like homophobic haters, I just like I laugh and I comment back like, obviously you have a crush on me, like, you know, if you're commenting right now, and like I play with it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't like some component of it that's hard. But what I love about this sort of challenge, this quest, so to speak, that I'm undergoing constantly in life, is that I get to break paradigms all the time. And I am like, people think that just because I'm gay that I don't believe in Jesus. Like I fucking love Jesus, and I also read tarot cards, and I also like commune with benevolent entities and my benevolent ancestors, and I also believe in LGBTQ plus rights, and I also believe that there is a war on testosterone. Like there's so many.
Yeah.
I'm dancing in so many realms.
It's not
where
one
people
side or
are
the
like,
other. And people try to put you in a box and they try to say, oh, that's what you think, you're over here then. And it's like, no, I'm not over there. Like I'm standing right here. And I remember back in the day hearing, if you don't have haters, you're not doing anything, like you're doing something right once you have haters. and thinking like, wow, that's a really stupid way to judge success by how many people are hating on you. And yet I've come to find that there is such a deep truth in that, that when you really start standing up and standing out and shining your true light, for some reason, like just as much as it's going to be medicine for one person, it's going to be triggering for another person. And it, in fact, there's this juxtaposition where the deeper something is resonating with one person, the more it's going to be dissonant for another. And the more that you try to play both sides and fit in with everybody, the less impact you actually have. I had this experience where I was leading a retreat. And I took people through this guided meditation, and somebody, they had induced a little bit of psilocybin, and somebody got really triggered by it. And like, it was like just extremely like, how could you do that? Like all this projection at me, like it was the worst part of the whole experience. And then somebody else was like, wow, that was my favorite part of the whole retreat. And it was like, really like, whoa, like, how do you rectify that? Like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to trigger anybody. I don't want to become a villain in anybody's eyes. And this is why I think that like archetype and idea of villainhood has a lot of power in it, because you kind of have to stand in opposition to other people casting you in that light and accept it as it comes. And you know, I want to be considered a good person. Like, it's really important to me. I've dedicated every ounce of my being to try to be a positive, impactful person. So when someone makes me the villain, it's like, oh, what? Like, how? Like, I've done everything right. Like, I've sacrificed for this. And still, it'll happen. And that's a big part of the journey. I think people like me and you, as we reach a certain threshold, we have to face. And I'm super grateful to have mentors in this space who have shown me that, like, you can face it with a smile. You can turn it around and make it content. You can Aikido that energy to make you stronger,
yes.
right?
Yeah, you did. I just want to give you a huge shout out, because apparently some hater made an edit of you.
Yeah.
Mudra's video that you did, and I thought that was the coolest edit ever. I was like, bro, shout out to Mateo for taking that edit and turning it into a piece of content, because I looked at that edit and I was like, damn, this is cool. Like, he's making fun of you, but I actually think your faces look super cool and the mudras look cool, and like and I'm like, dude, you know, they're like doing the work of marketing you, right?
There's this one teacher in the space, Jesse Elder, who I really look up to, because he's the real deal, man. Like, there's a lot of coaches out there, but this guy is like actually, in every respect, he trains martial arts, so he's actually deadly. He actually has a bunch of abundance. He actually has his own land that he's cultivating sustainable farms on. And he has this thing called haterade, where whenever people post hate against him, he's able to like really wittily retort it in a way that's not confrontational, but like makes them kind of question everything that they're saying. And then he'll like screenshot that and post it. And he created a whole course around teaching people how to deal with haterade and how to...
That's really cool. I gotta check him out. I don't even know who
Jesse Elder's a great guy. I highly recommend him. And yeah, that's just, the Aikido of the energy is a very powerful skill that we have to develop as we go forward, because there is this force working in opposition against us. And, you know, it's something it comes in two ways, right? There's like the call of like what you should do, and then there's the push of what you shouldn't do. And I've always been really resistant to the should energy, because it's like whenever everyone is talking about one thing, I'm like, I can't talk about that. Like, I'm not going to touch on the thing. It's like, I think back to when everyone was posting a black square, and I was like, I don't want to post a black square, not because I don't support this movement, but because you're trying to force me to do it. And my whole life has been like, no, like, I'm going to do what I want to do, not what you try to tell me. And that was crazy, man. My girlfriend at the time almost got fired from her job because she didn't post a black square. It was like so much cultural pressure around it. And it's like, it had nothing to do with the issue of support anymore to me. It's like this, there is this almost weaponized virtuing that has become super popular nowadays. And I've seen you talk about, the juxtaposition between this like wokeism and red pillism and how both of them have a lot of toxic traits and qualities to them. But outside of either of those paradigms, I'm just like, focus on where's the pressure, and I want to work in opposition to that pressure.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Dude, you're such a fucking genius, man. Everything you said, I was like, I need to fucking talk about this. But the funny part about wokeism and red pill that I notice is that they're both like advocating that they're being themselves, but their entire identity is wrapped around somebody else losing so that they can win. So that's actually people pleasing in disguise. When you need somebody else to be offended by your shine in order for you to shine, then you still need an external validation of somebody being offended in order for you to shine. And I see this all the time with like the red pill people, like they're just not even in their own lane. Everything that, and the wokeism people, like both, they're talking about, like everything that they talk about is about controlling somebody else who just will never love them. Will never love them.
It's an oppositional response, right? It's like the force is going in one direction, so I'm going to push back against it the other way. And it's really frustrating how easily, again, people define you and put you in like, they're like, all right, you're on that side now. All right, you're on that side now. Just because you might push against their pressure in both directions.
Yeah. And it's funny, I have this one mentor, Simone Soul, that
I've been following her, by the way. She's a great follow ever since you showed me her.
Changed my life. I'm in her joyful marketing program, whatever. She changed my life, and she's a big reason why I started posting the anime stuff, the spiritual thirst trap stuff. When I recently had an experience of like reclaiming Jesus back into my life, I felt so much shame because I was like, is it wrong for me to be a gay person and do this that's also very in touch with this sexual energy, right? And that has certain beliefs about sexuality that are against the church. And it's like, and she was always like, dude, like take that either or out and put an and, put an and put an and. And one thing she always encouraged with me is say fuck you to me whenever an idea of mine makes you constrict in your expression. If you're holding something back because you're afraid that I'll disagree with it, then literally just say fuck you to me. That's part of this coaching program. And I was like, bro, this is it. And it's like, what she, one thing she taught me that changed my life, and I add, whenever I'm coaching someone who's like a content creator of any kind, I will always tell them, like, stay in your lane and focus on marketing to people that are your like super fans. Like imagine that you, and assume that the void that you're posting to is full of people that are obsessed with anything you say. Market to them. Don't market to your critics. Don't market to fight all the time. Like once in a while, sure, like, I don't want this to come off as a should either. But like if your entire like brand, or if your expression is based off of like criticizing, controlling, or trying to convince somebody to follow your path, then just when I see that, I think it reminds me back to like that childhood, like of like needing to prove yourself to be loved, and that's like a mind virus in my opinion. I think that's a glitch in like the nervous system. That's not fun for me, at least.
Have you, you've been back on Twitter now, and I don't know if you were on Twitter before. I just joined after Elon bought Twitter, but have you seen what he's been doing with the community notes?
No, actually, I briefly saw something about it, but, no.
It's really neat.
Cool, though.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the anti-fact check, where before everything was getting fact checked, now it's this new system of community notes where the community has the ability to now come forward and say like a statement about a statement. And it's crowdsourced and it's democratized. So people vote on which one like should be the community notes. And it's a really awesome way of taking away this like top down pressure of what is and what's true, and kind of giving it back to the people to rise up and be like, this is what we actually think. It's like an anti-suppressive mechanism. And it's one of the reasons, I mean, like, you know, ever since getting back on Twitter, I've just been really enamored with the ideals that Elon has tried to bring onto that platform. And it's made me want to do, it's interesting how you don't see fact checking stuff much anymore. That's kind of disappeared.
Yeah. And I also now love Twitter. I didn't before. I was like really resistant to it.
Me too. For years, I was like, I don't want this, but it's now I'm loving it.
But now I'm like, oh, Twitter. Like, I wish I took it seriously before. Like,
Right.
there's that part of me.
Right.
And yeah, I also very much stand a lot for like what he's doing. I don't think he's perfect. I don't think anybody is. Another thing that I advocate for is admitting that we're all a little fucked up.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like, if we're human, we have we still shit, right? And shitting isn't pleasant. Like, it smells bad. We have parts of us that smell bad, that are crusty, that are wrong, that are probably never gonna be pure, right? Elon too. So I don't like put him on a pedestal either of like thinking that every decision he makes is a great one. And at the same time, like, I believe that it's impossible to exist on the planet without eventually harming somebody.
Yeah.
That's another thing Simone taught me too, actually. She was like, if you're posting because you're filtering your post through like, how could I make it not harm somebody, you will hate your life.
Yeah.
Because literally you cannot exist without somebody perceiving what you did as harmful. So like, just fucking post.
I mean, did you see what happened to Mr. Beast, bro?
I'm not sure who that is
either. Oh man, he's the biggest YouTuber in the world. He put out a video where he cured 1,000 people's blindness.
Mm-hmm.
And he got so much hate for it. It's like, you can literally cure 1,000 people's blindness and people will come up and hate you for it. It's like, there's nothing you can do that people aren't capable of hating on. It's non-existent.
Yeah, it's so funny that the other day I posted, I'm going to say 2 quick stories because I create a lot of content on TikTok. Even though TikTok, there's something about TikTok that feels really off to me right now. But the actual platform to me is fun to create on. But when I had my first viral video on TikTok, like, it was 50% haters and 50% like my fans defending me from the haters. It was so funny. And the haters, it was a post basically empowering people to take charge of healing their trauma instead of being a victim to it. So 50% were people that were like, but I want to be a victim and the world should bend over for me because I'm traumatized. And then the other 50% were like, no, be empowered and stop being mean to Carlos, right? Like, and then recently, like last week, I made a post about how to hold space for that voice that most people have of like, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. Like, how to hold space for it and actually like turn that voice into a collaborator, a friend, a part that can trust you. How to reclaim it, right? Because most people like fight against that voice. And someone commented, oh, this is dangerous for people with bipolar. And I was like, bro, like, I've been diagnosed with bipolar and I use this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you cannot. And then everybody else was like, this really helped me. This changed my life. Thank you. Oh my God. So it is true. Like, you know.
And it's not an easy thing to not feel an effect from that. We talk about like, oh yeah, we're practicing this, we're good at this. But when that guy made that meme about me, there was even though I'm like intellectually like, oh fuck yeah, like I'm doing something right. Like, I know this is exactly what I've been talking about and preaching. My body still felt it. And it's an interesting thing of like, how do you learn to work with that energy of that body response, and how can you like move that energy and create boundaries for that energy? It's like, how do you use your voodoo wizardry to make yourself less susceptible to that energetic like arrow being tossed your way? And that's a practice.
That's so good what you just said, because I think a lot of people look at me, and I imagine to you too, because you're fucking cool. Like, people look at us and think that we've arrived to this point where that shit just doesn't bother us. And I'm gonna tell y'all straight up, like, about 2 weeks ago, an old friend of mine completely ghosted me on my content. And that triggered me. This was like 2 weeks ago. And up until maybe 2 days ago is when I finally let that shit go. But it really did. It hurt. It hurt. Like, and the thing about me is that I've stopped. I understand this one thing. The path that I've chosen, first of all paths that we choose are going to have some discomfort, some pain. If we choose to stay comfortable, to stay a people pleaser, to stay copy and paste, you know, like if I'm choosing to go into the coaching field and to pretend I'm Tony Robbins or pretend I'm like a mala bead wearing person and it's not really who I am, right? That light stage, and that's not really who I am. Like, you're going to feel discomfort because your soul is going to be like, what the fuck? Like, this doesn't feel like home.
But
There's going to be that.
I saw what you did, man. And I think it's an interesting, like Aikido move to point out, you know, there's lots of them. Like you can set up the barrier, you can act stoic, you can pretend it doesn't affect you at all. You can flip it into a positive. And what you did was you authentically shared your experience about how it did affect you. And in that way, you kind of like took that energy and put it back out into the world as an example and as a powerful message that I'm sure a lot of people resonate. So in terms of like techniques of how we can work with that energy, like that is one to stand up and say, actually, like these haters do get me. And it does hurt when people don't accept me. And this particular example, like did have an impact. And I'm going to share about that. And through that sharing, resonate with others and draw in my truth again.
Exactly. And like, you know, I've chosen the path of like, I'm going to stand for something, and that something is going to be what feels true for me. And I'm going to market it to my people. Market, right? I'm going to share it to my people. To my people that I assume are obsessed with everything I say, right? And I understand that discomfort is never really going to go away. There's going to be days where it's going to bounce right off me and I'm going to laugh about it. And then there's going to be days where I'm going to look at a hater and I'm just feeling off and in doubt. And I'm going to read that comment and it's going to send me into a spiral. And I just bounce back. Like I recalibrate back to who I am, right? Like I made this tweet the other day that just, it really lands in this moment is like, you can't lose a fight that you haven't stopped fighting. Like if you're still, it was something like that. And like if you're in the arena of life playing the game, assume like if you're still playing the game, you haven't lost. So like, sure, maybe you bounce into a doubt spiral and somebody like hurts your feelings and like you forget who you are, but you're still playing the game. So like you haven't lost. It doesn't mean that you're a loser and that you fucked up and blah, 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 like, or that you're weak, right? Like, it just means that you're fucking human and you can, sometimes sometimes you're in the arena of life and you get a jab to the face, a right hook, you know, a knee to the balls, right? Like, and it's back to back and it hurts. But then you get up and you're like, actually, like, now I'm going to throw the jabs and the right hooks and you get a few in, you know? Like, yeah.
You know what idea I really just came to me and I really like is systematizing these. We'll just stick specifically to like kind of your villain academy and ethos, like systematizing these methods of energetic Aikido and creating almost cartoon anime symbolic representations of them. So it's like, you know, maybe I'm trying to think of like you got like what's a anime character that has like a force field power? I'm trying to think one out there. I know they exist, but I can't.
Maybe like the first thing that came up is like Neji or Hinata when they do that like
like spinning wheel
trigrams palm rotation.
Exactly. Maybe that represents like a certain way of dealing with it. And then maybe another way is like the energy comes in and it kind of gets transmuted and it gets redirected, or the energy gets transformed into a piece of content. And maybe that looks like an avatar summoning. It's like where you're taking that energy and you're turning it into a fucking toad summoning or something. I I like the idea of this almost taking symbols to represent techniques that are tied to things that are already highly powerful to us. Like, you know, acknowledging that your true expression is your Excalibur, right? So like tying like that symbol of Excalibur to the truth of your expression. And I feel like that kind of gamifies these practices where now you start to become, you know, as someone's throwing stuff at you and you're dealing with it, you're not just having this experience, but you know, you're drawing your sword and you're casting a spell. And I don't know, that thought just came to me, and I was like imagining the Academy of Villains with like everybody having their own particular special move.
Yeah,
And
okay, I love what you're saying. You know, one thing that came up, so yeah, Academy of Villains, for those of you who don't know, is just a quest, a group quest that I run my people through, right? And one thing that I teach in Academy of Villains is like approaching those painful emotions when people start to reject you or vilify you, right? Approaching, instead of being like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, like I literally tell people, this is the prompt I give them. I'm like, if your anxiety or your pain or your feeling of abandonment was actually a person you're having sex with, how would you approach feeling that feeling? You probably, if you're having sex with somebody, you're not going to be like, I don't want to be here, you suck. Like, you know what I mean? This is how people approach their anxiety, or when they feel abandoned. They look at that part of themselves and they're like, oh, I don't like feeling this, so abandonment, you should go away. And I tell people, I'm like, imagine those emotions are like little people living in the village of you. Yeah. That like you have sex with. Like if you're having sex with them, is it gonna kill the vibe when you like treat them like shit? Or is it gonna make it better? I mean, I guess it depends, right? If people are into degradation and things like that. But like, you know, for the most part, it's probably gonna kill the vibe, right? So like, how could you approach your pain with that same energy of like, I'm in relationship with my pain, and it's not wrong that I'm feeling this. It's human, and like you said, do that energetic aikido, right?
And there's a lot I want to say on this, but there's also, you know how like sometimes people are talking and you have a great thought and you're like, I don't want to lose this thought as we continue down these paths. I just had another idea. One of them is like, you see the truth of the hurt behind their statement, right? So it's like recognizing what's actually underneath it. And that could be like a Sharingan, you know, because it's like a seeing through, like a visual power, you know?
Dude, that is so good.
Right? Take that. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know, it's people hurt. You know, there's this cliche quote that people say that I'm like, it works. It's true. Hurt people, right? Like, like everyone has about, let's say we have like a, you know, if we were to gamify this, like we have certain mana points, and mana points represent our creativity. Everybody starts the day with 100 mana points of creativity, right? And every time that we express something, we're using up those mana points, and we recharge it by sleeping, right? Like that. People are either using that creative energy to consume and then to hate on people that they consume, or they're using that creative energy to express and to create. But we all have the same creative energy. And people that are using their mana points to spew venom onto other people is because they have like the debuff of the trauma wounding of like, you know, believing that they're not good enough or not worthy. And they're projecting it onto people who believe they're good enough.
And it's an interesting thought to consider that, you know, someone is using energy thinking about you. They're burning calories. There is actual energy in the world, in the ether, that is going your direction. And as long as you don't send energy back, you're actually almost like you can almost pull power from it, right? Like David Goggins says this interesting thing where he'll have people talk shit on his Instagram. He'll actually take those shit talking posts, he'll record himself saying them, and then he'll listen to that as he runs. And that's like almost like a Sith dark energy practice of like,
that is so cool.
Yeah, I'm tired, but I'm gonna show this motherfucker, like, you know. So I'm like, I'm starting to put together these like different pieces of different ways in which you can harness that energy for your benefit and for your gain, whether it's retransmuting it into an authentic expression, or creating a boundary where it's completely ineffective, or drawing it in and turning it into dark energy strength, or seeing through it to the truth of what it actually is. And like all of those could be represented with different like superpowers.
Yeah. Dude, I feel like if me and you were in Star Wars, we would be like gray Jedis. We would walk both
Totally.
paths. And I love what you said about Sith, right? Because I also think that in the media growing up, like we're programmed like this idea of good and evil.
Yeah.
And one thing that really freed me a lot is this idea of like neutrality. Like everything has benefits and consequences. Every decision I make is just about which consequences I'm willing to put up with and which benefits most appeal to me, right? And, a lot of people, when they think Sith Jedi, they think evil.
Yeah.
And when they think, or Sith, Sith Lord, Sith, whatever, dark side of the Force, they think evil. And when they think Jedi, they think benevolent, good, godly, right? Mm-hmm. And like, what I want to offer people is that swinging far on one side over the other is like it's almost like if you're choosing, like, I love the word God, so I'm gonna use the word God, but it's almost like you're choosing to experience like 50% of like God's love.
It's a good way of putting it.
Right? Like, God created the Sith and the dark side and the light side of the Force.
The Force created both sides. It's like it's all the Force.
It's all the Force.
It's all the Force.
Like, it's still called the Force. So like, so what is it about both sides that resonate with me? And you see this like projection of like good and evil and everything. Like, if I was to use dark side, light side of the Force, you could put woke, red pill. You could put Republican, Democrat. You could put Christian or atheist, or whatever the other side of that is. You could put colonizer, indigenous. You could put black, white, like man, woman, right? But it's like it's there's something for everybody there. Unvaxxed, vaccinated, right? Like, there's aspects and medicines and truths on both sides. And like, what keeps me grounded whenever I like start getting my God complex kicking in of like, I know what's right for people, is like, those very people that I'm fighting against, that I'm battling, those critics that I'm trying to convince, are also made in the image of God, just like I am. We are. I believe that, at least. Yeah. Every human, even the people that ditch me and abandon me when I shine my truth, we're all made in the image of God. That doesn't mean that I now like let them cross my boundaries, right? Like, that doesn't mean that I let someone who's shitty stay in my life. No. Like, if someone's treating me like shit, they can take the exit door. But that does not mean that they're not also made like in the image of God, and that there's not some sort of like medicine that I can access through the tension that their presence creates in my life.
I have this idea because I really like the idea of, obviously, like cartooning and gamifying things, of creating a program about helping people embody their hero version of themselves, like tapping into their superhero energy, and then creating this like collective group of hero self people, and then one day having an Academy of Villains versus heroes like clash crossover in some way with like, I don't know what that would look like, but the marketing for that would be amazing.
Bro, it's so fun. And then everyone would think that we're battling each other, but
it would be a collaborative win, right? It would be like a synergistic, like, two sides of the spectrum coming together to make each other better. But I see the marketing for that being just like amazing.
What the funny part is too, is out of every student that I've had in Academy of Villains, only maybe like 2 of them even actually like anime, which blew my mind.
Wow.
Because everybody else still resonated with my content. Like, they were reading my content even though it was anime related, and I was using anime stories to market this experience. They were reading it, and they were like, this resonates.
Yeah.
So it's like, this goes back to what we were talking about before about, like, I won't be understood or it's too niched. Like, man, your people, they might find a video that you're talking about a certain niche and they'll follow you for that niche or a post that you wrote, whatever. But your people, your true fucking super fans, like, they stay for you.
Yeah.
They stay for your energy. They stay. You could be talking about brooms one day and mustard and kinks the next day and anime the next. They will stay because something about your aliveness turns their light on, amplifies their aliveness. So, like, I don't even know where I was going with this other than, like, you know, what beauty is it when you just share who you are and relate it to whatever it is that you're talking about. For me, I love psychospiritual concepts, health, wellness, spirituality. That's what I talk about, you know. But there's some people who might talk about real estate. And they're like, oh, but I can't talk about anime and real estate.
It's like, yes, you can, right? Yeah.
In fact, if you did, I would work with you.
Yeah, and that is where the real magic comes in. It's not in the specificity, but it's in the combination of unique nodes of interest, right? That really make people shine. It's like you're not going to be the best writer in the world, but you might be the best writer who also loves old mythology, who also loves like Star Wars. It's like you can cross-pollinate these different worlds and come up with something that you actually can be the unique best at. And yeah, it's interesting because we know this, right? We're clear on this. We know that the more true you are, the more it resonates, the more you shine. And then there is the embodied practice, right? And this is actually what I work with people a lot during my breathwork classes is breaking up the energetic physical holding patterns that have accumulated over years that hold us back, right? Because like every time throughout your life you've wanted to express yourself in some way and you've repressed that, the way in which you repressed that was through holding your body. And those holding patterns get remembered. And through doing practices like breathing, you can start to bring those emotions up, and cathartic movement of shaking and getting weird and cracking the mask, breaking the facial musculature, because it's like this is ground zero for how we lie to the world. You're doing great. Yeah, I'm doing great. And you just want to really cry. And that's like a lot of what I work with people is how do, at least in my breathwork experiences, is like, how do we step into that weirdness and telling them that like, look, weirdness is the key to the magic, and breathwork is just like taking you to the door. But what allows you to open the door and step through the other side is that giving yourself the permission to be weird. And some people just can't do it, man. And I have so much sympathy in my heart for them because I know without a doubt the misery that comes with it. It's not even like a question. It's you see it so clearly on their faces, the way they hold themselves. They're tight. They're locked in it. And it is like a breaking through. And like, yeah, there's ways you can practice this. Like we talked about meditating in public or stretching in public.
Yeah.
And making, maybe it's like singing at the grocery store, or there's so many ways to practice this, right? But it is a practice. And the more that you work on it, the more that you will be able to take this concept of knowing that your truth is how you should be expressing and actually embody it and live it, because the physical will always be a limiting factor.
Yeah. You know what I love? Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Your specialty is in unlocking and dislodging those places within the physical. So you use a lot of movement, breath work, health, right? Which is, it's interesting, right? Like the energy exchange that we're having here, because my specialty is in like the psycho-spiritual, what I call like the energetic, and the realm of like thought. Like that's like big. A lot of what I work on is like using language as codes to program the mind, right? And you said one code that I just had to write down because it's just so simple and it's so fucking good. But it's like, weirdness is the way to the magic.
Yeah.
Like, okay, to anybody listening to this shit right now, like, just imagine what your life would look like 3 months from now if you genuinely believed that sentence. Weirdness is the way to the magic. What parts of your life would you stop hiding? What parts of your life, what people in your life do you feel like you need to act cool around that you would just let go of because you don't feel safe to be weird about them? What would change about your fitness? What would change about the way that you dress if weirdness is the way to magic, right? So many people, they feel cringe, they feel embarrassment, they feel a weird emotion in their body, and they run away from that. But what if you believed weirdness was the magic, like, what if you change that to like weirdness is like seeing cringe as the compass? Oh shit, this thing makes me feel cringy. Maybe I should try it.
Resistant,
right? Like,
the obstacle is the way, right? The obstacle is the way.
Tim Ferriss has this discomfort challenge. I wonder if you've heard of it, where you like lie down on the floor in a public place for 5 minutes, and then you get up like if nothing happened.
Exactly.
That was like my first step into that work. But then I started like taking it further. I started like, okay, I'm in the sauna right now, and I just really want to sing.
Yeah.
Even though there's people in here, like, or someone might walk in, like, okay, let me just sing for like 10 seconds, right? Yeah. And my heart starts pounding, and then there's this fear response, this cringy, embarrassing feeling, but then I do it, and then I feel like almost like a god after, right? Like, or when I do a lot of freestyle rap too, and
me too.
There's times, fuck yeah, dude. There's times where like I'm having jam sessions with friends, and there's like this part of me that's like, okay, we need to look cool, we need to look like we've practiced,
and that stops the flow.
And literally I feel like I'm constipated. I sound awkward, and then but then when I tell myself this, I'm like, okay, purposefully sound like shit right now. Then I almost every time what comes out is fucking awesome.
So many things I want to say here. Okay.
Go for it.
This is the quintessential human condition. You know, it comes down to Adam and Eve. It's like, what happened when we ate that apple and we realized, like, oh shit, I'm naked, right? It is that awareness of other people's awareness of us that makes us conscious. So it's like we're touching on something that is so deeply foundational, and we're kind of tickling at like the emergent components of it. But it's like, it is what enables us to even be. If we didn't have this awareness of other people's awareness of us, we would just be animals. We wouldn't have that feedback mechanism that allows us to reflect, that allows us to realize like, oh, I am here. This is me. What is this me that I am, right? And yes, it evolves as this like tribal pressure. And the other thing I wanted to say is, and just ask you, like, what's your definition of weirdness?
This is what comes up. The courage to look at all those parts of us that we've like fragmented with this idea that we need to fix this away or change it because it doesn't belong. And the courage to say, actually, you know what? You belong to the party. This part of me that I was trying to fix, actually, I want you to help me create this post right now. You, this part that I was trying to hide so I can look cool, actually, I want you to help me get dressed today. Like, you know, it's the courage to reclaim those parts that have that we've tried to fix away and show it to the world.
So my definition of weirdness that I've always used, it's your internal truth juxtaposed against external cultural judgment, right? It's like that dichotomy of like, where does your truth meet the judgment, and where does that clashing happen? And I was like, I want to look up what the actual dictionary definition of weirdness is. Quality of being strange or unusual. But yeah, it's like, what defines that strangeness? It's
like, what does strange actually mean?
It is that juxtaposition, and it's an important, you know, I saw a tweet recently that said, shame is a civilizing force. We cast it aside at our own peril. So it's not that this isn't valuable, right? Because there becomes a certain point where your weirdness can have a negative impact on the collective. For example, like say we are in a tribe and one person keeps shitting in the middle of the floor. It's like, hey man, like don't do that. Like you're affecting us. So there is this like line of functionality in which shame is useful. It helps you to be aware of how your behavior is impacting the collective. But it's almost been like just like hyper weaponized and and over the time that culture has evolved, become so constrictive that now it's like this constant yin and yang force of like true expression versus like, hey, this is what is beneficial for everyone else around us. And I think that's kind of like what we're talking about here, this balancing act between like, yes, do what's right for you, and also like, you know, if someone keeps farting in the sauna, like, hey man, like consider me as well, right?
Oh
Like,
my God.
because
That is such a good
because
explanation.
sovereignty matters and there are boundaries, right? It's like your weirdness, yes, but to the point that it starts to affect me, that's where we need to start to draw the line. And so those lines have been pushed so far where it's like, how do we even know? Because it is such a vague thing. Like, is my singing pissing you off? Well, sorry, I'm going to keep singing. But also, yeah, like sometimes it's so it is this like constant balancing act and recalibration of how do we bring our truth in harmony with the collective truth.
Yeah, dude, that is such a beautiful point you made because sometimes I vilify shame so much that I forget that, like, thank God that, like, we've used it so that people don't shit in the middle of the floor, right? That was a
Yeah.
really good example. So thanks for that.
Yeah,
And yeah, I
there's
just,
when you do something like, say you made a mistake and you like, what's an example? Like, say you were feeling like, oh, I'm just gonna take my friend's thing here just because I want it, right? And your friend's like, yo, what the fuck, man? It's like, it's good for you to feel shame in those moments. Like, shame is the force that helps you to be aware of like, oh, I don't actually want to hurt this person. Like, I don't actually want to have a negative impact on the world. So it can be, it's like, it is this double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. It's what it
yeah,
is.
dude, and it's such a nuanced, challenging conversation to talk about because, like, there's certain areas of my life that now that you mention it, that I feel grateful that I was shamed for. And I'm almost like afraid to talk about it because it's so like
that's the shame, right?
polarizing,
Yeah.
you know? And
We got to forgive ourselves too.
it's just, yeah, I think so many people have used shame as a tool to get people to follow their ideology.
Yeah.
Um,
It's weaponized.
and that's dogma. That's like what the Christian Crusaders did, you know, in history, right? Like the ones that like killed people for not being Christian and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And now we have a situation especially on social media, where there's like, and I've heard people talk about this, and so this is not an original idea, and I really resonate with it. That now people aren't really like doing, at least in like North America and uh, and in Europe, people aren't really like fighting war, like killing people for not agreeing with them, as much as like having psychological warfare, using media as a weapon, and like it's such a new thing. But like, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but I guess the way that I navigate it, because me being a gay man, like growing up, like I did struggle a lot with self-acceptance, right? So sometimes those little voices come back when I experience content on social media that like goes against who I am, and that person seems to be a good person. Um, there's this one mentor that I used to really follow that I feel so confused about right now. And even saying this feels vulnerable. I met you at one of his retreats.
Elliot
And
Hulse? Yeah.
I'm not gonna name drop him, but like,
Well, I did shit.
okay, you did.
Yeah,
So
just-
whatever, I guess.
yeah.
So his name's Elliot Hulse, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've been following that man for years.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking gay. And I went to his retreat and I met you there. And that retreat changed my life.
Yeah.
And it started a journey a quest in my life that I didn't even know was possible. Then, somewhere a few years after that retreat, he became like what seems like born again Christian.
Yeah.
And like, but he says a lot of really fucked up shit about gay people, and I'm like, wait a damn minute. Like,
what does he say about gay people that you found not resonate? Because I haven't actually heard that.
You know, and one thing I want to actually like rewind is I don't know if my sources of that have been super clean.
You have to be careful with that stuff, man, because people are really quick to misrepresent people's actual statements. And that's another like version of this weaponization where people like, and I don't know if you follow Scott Adams on Instagram, but I mean, this happens everywhere. This is the cancel culture thing. It's like you say one thing, and then people are like, oh, you're homophobic. Oh, you're racist. And it was like, no, I was just saying this one thing. So it's always really important to go to the source and actually hear what they're saying. I think that is a super crucial aspect of everything that we're talking about, is you need to get as close to the source and as you know, as past your own wounds as possible, so that you can, even if someone is saying like, hey, you are wrong, you can take that energy and not let it push you to the point of seeing like, well, where is this coming from? You know, because it's on both sides. You know, people saying like, oh, you're racist. It's like, wait, whoa. But actually, what are you trying to say here? Yeah. And then
there was first of all, I do, this is where, again, I really invite people to never put me on a pedestal, because this is something I do struggle with. Like, sometimes I do, especially when it comes to like homophobia.
Yeah.
Like, it just triggers all these things.
Yeah. But, I can imagine, man.
There was an article I read about him that was, I think, or a statement that he wrote, like, responding to Vice about an article that they wrote about him that was like what he called fake news. And he said, I forget the exact wording that he said, but it was something like this, like satanic rainbow mafia or something like that, referring to like LGBTQ+. And that was like him writing it. Yeah. And I read that and I felt like a knife just went inside my heart. Yeah. Because I was reading the entire article and I was like, yeah, of course, like if it's fake news, like whatever, you know, like he doesn't deserve that. But then that one line, I was like, oh, you lost
so
me
this
there.
is actually like, I think we're getting to something that I feel a lot of resistance to talk about, because there is this like cultural pressure to even discuss these things. But I think it's important and interesting, because there is certainly this active effort to misrepresent people as more homophobic, more racist, more misogynistic than their intention. You see it with Jordan Peterson. Like, there's, you know, it's like, how do people write off the depth of Jordan Peterson's perspective as something as, have you listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson?
No, actually.
He's one of the deepest thinkers alive. He is actually the person who got me to consider the value in the Bible. I was extremely dismissive. I used to listen to a lot of like pro-science debates against Christians and was like, oh, it's all just ideological dogma, brainwashing, propaganda. And then listening to it through his perspective, I got to see the deep metaphysical, archetypical truth inside of it. And he's like such a deep thinker, man. He will talk about Pinocchio for 8 hours. He has this like 8-hour series breaking down the metaphysics behind these simple childhood stories and why they resonate so deeply. Like, what does it mean to wish upon a star? What is a star? Like, what are these aspirations in ourselves? Why do we call celebrities star? And people just won't listen, and they will just take like a thing and they will then identify this whole person's character around a thing. And that seems to happen a lot, where now it's like this weaponization of like, if you're like, hey, I don't think little kids should be going to drag shows, all of a sudden you're homophobic, you know? And it's like, where is that line? Because I hope you can sense that I'm not homophobic, but I do.
You know, it's so okay. Like, now that we're like just going all like into this side of the room, when you first reached out to me, there was like, cause I met you at, you know, Elliot's retreat. there was fear. I was like, oh, is he gonna like hate me because he's a like follower of Elliot Hulse, right? Like, and and having that initial collaboration that we did was like super supportive of
Mm.
my growth, because that's when I started to realize that like there's a part of me that's like gullible and just easily believe things that I find on the internet. And um I really started to question anybody who would say things about hating straight men, or um straight men are this, right? Because I started to fear straight people. Because I was like, straight men in particular. I started to like, there's actually a friend of mine that I think he's also friends with you as well, or old friend. We're not friends anymore. That I considered like a best friend.
Mm.
That like also is within the Elliot Hulse world. That started to post like homophobic stuff on his content. And mind you, at the time I was helping this person become a content creator. I taught him so many things. I helped him like have his first few viral videos for free because he was my friend. And um and then he started posting homophobic stuff. And then he like ghosted me completely. And that also triggered this like fear of like, okay, so, he's in the Elliot Hulse world. So anyone that even remotely sounds like that side of consciousness, I started to become afraid of. And then on social media, we don't know who controls the media. There's a lot, like, I do agree that there's a lot of like uh storytelling around painting men as villains that I don't think is fair. And sometimes I like fall into that trap because there is that wounding of where I have been hurt by straight men, right? So
Wow,
that's
it's interesting,
I
man.
actually think that this conversation is such a good one
Me
because
too.
we're speaking about nuance,
Yeah.
and we're empowering people to question and have more discernment and be like, bro, like not everyone who's Christian hates gays.
Yeah.
Not everyone who like resonates with Elliot Hulse and Jordan Peterson hates gays, right? Or like not every gay person hates Jesus,
Yeah.
right? Like
Not every gay person wants kindergartners being twerked on.
yeah.
It's like they're and you see these groups like gay men against groomers, and it's like it's this interesting like matrix glitch where it's like, oh wait, we can't call you homophobic because you're gay. Or like Candace Owens, where it's like a black right-wing person questioning Black Lives Matter, where it's like like we can't classify them, we can't put them into camps. And I think those people are really important because they resist this urge to be classified and put people into boxes. And whether it's on both sides, I think there needs to be like gay people standing up against pedophilia and grooming, and like black Republicans standing up against it's like both ends of the spectrum need to have these presuppositions reversed and switched against themselves so that we can both like recognize, hey, we're like all on the same team here. Like we're all trying to like create a better world together and find a place where we can love each other. And it's not about hate. And I think the reason why these words like homophobic and racism have been weaponized so much is because people really don't want to be that. Like, like I want to be a good person, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that someone could think I'm a racist is like, again, like that's like one of the deepest in talking about these like energetic arrows that people can project at you. It's like, call me a loser, call me a nerd, whatever, call me a racist. I'm like, whoa, that's hard to just take. Like I'm like that is really, it's like a really powerful energetic hater spear.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and
because it is so fucked up because there were people who are really racist, and it's like that's the last thing that you would want to be if you are a good person.
yeah, and it's one thing that I think about too is like the people that like choose to weaponize and attack and look for that, like constantly look for that and like police the internet, right? Those people, like, I almost want to ask them, like, how well is your approach actually working? Like,
Horribly. It's
is
pushing
it
people
like I
farther
want to sit
away,
them
you
down and
know?
be like, and they're gonna be like, but, and I'm gonna be like, but scientific, like factually speaking, if you were to measure how many people you've converted to your fucking ideology, like, how well has it worked?
I mean, wokeism has made more people like, like people were not
Exactly.
right. I grew up liberal. I grew up in California, like the idea of like a rural like Republican was like we had all these ethoses of like, oh, dumb redneck and racist and closed-minded and bigotry. And it's, here I am in Texas and it's like, no, actually, we just don't want to be forced to, take a vaccine or something like sovereignty. We just
Yeah.
respect sovereignty. And it's like, oh, you're an all right extremist. And it's like, whoa,
Bro,
bro, like,
dude. Okay, so it's funny. I've never actually like talked about this on the internet, but I think it's time, right?
because
Like,
why haven't
I
you, right?
also,
Because of the
I
pressure.
exactly. I also chose not to forcefully be coerced into a medical procedure, and
Yeah.
dude, like, I was vilified. I was
Yeah.
like by my local community. I
Yeah.
was like seen as less than
Yeah.
by people that were like my own blood.
Yeah.
And until it all passed over, then suddenly it was like nothing happened, right? And that was just so crazy to me because
Insane.
it wasn't, there was no questioning, right?
No
Like,
conversation, no
there,
exchanging. It's
it was literally like, if you disagree,
like, yeah. And that's the same
like,
like mindset that leads to the greatest atrocities in the world. And I don't and it's like it's all piecing apart everything that we're talking about. Now we're getting to like the larger scale of it, and it does seem to me, and I'm what do I know, but it seems to me like there is this like large scale weaponization of shame, like pharmacy companies weaponized shame to try to get you to use their product, and a lot of people got caught up in that or were affected by that. But that's like the largest scale of this shame thing that we're talking about. It's like it goes as small as like, oh, I'm aware that you're aware of me, to, oh, I want to exist in this tribe, to, oh, don't shit in the sauna, to like, oh, now like do what we say or you get put in the camp. And it's
yeah, you know, it's been happening all of human history. Like, I'd like to think that it's, gonna get better, and I see myself as more of an optimist, right? um and to like the person listening that's like, well, what do I do with this, right? Like,
starts with ourself.
my invitation for you is to like really stay in your own lane. And what I mean by that is like focus on literally, if you're, let's say you're a content creator, I use that as an example a lot because I love creating content and I love helping content creators too, is like staying in your own lane means like assuming that that void that you're posting to are people that are obsessed with you and only focusing on them and shining and speaking your truth. And notice where in your life are you either oring yourself. I'm either gay or I'm Christian. I'm either sexual or I'm sacred. I'm either, um, you know, right or left. I'm either, right? Like, where in your life are you either oring yourself? And just like ask yourself, what would it look like if you replace the either or with an and? Get specific,
And
right?
start
Like,
practicing building up the physical, emotional, and psychological stability and resistance to be able to stand up and, when the Nazis come, be like, no, this is wrong, no matter what the
exactly.
consequences
Yes.
are.
And how
Like,
do you do that? By training the absolute fuck out of your body, by collaborating with your nervous system, by eating right, by eating healthy, by nourishing your mind with the thoughts and the codes that you put into it.
and
You
not
know?
and trying as much as possible to become independent from external systems of control. You know, that's
Yeah.
like a larger step. It's like, yeah, as long as it's like, if you work in a building where they can take away your job for something you say, like, you can't really say shit.
Yeah.
And that's the world we live in. But again, it starts simple. It starts with, like, shake out the bullshit, take some big breaths, make some weird faces, stretch in public, and then really recognize, what do I want to be? Who am I as a person? What do I want to stand for? And then how can I start expressing that into a world where my weirdness is refined and exercised to the point where I'm able to take a stand against pressure, and then eventually people might resonate with that, and we can all come together to, you know, hopefully not be in opposition, but yeah, unify
As much as we can.
as much as we can. And it might not be possible, but maybe we can, as a collective, get better. And this is like the grand scale of things. It's like, you know, countries go to war over this shit, but how can we start to, like, respect people's sovereignty and respect, like, it really comes down to sovereignty and boundaries, like knowing, like, how far can you stand before you start to encroach on somebody else? And then how can we build enough abundance that we're no longer pushed by hurt, traumas, and scarcities that feel like we need to impose on other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it all starts with you know, being a little weirder in your day-to-day life.
100%. Look, I mean, look at me and Mateo. If you're pedestalizing us, like, I encourage you to stand on that pedestal, because I just shared, like, the sticky parts, right? You shared that there's sticky parts for you too.
Yeah.
Like, I think what I really love is this. I believe this, and I have a sense you believe this too. If not, you probably wouldn't be here. But it's like, you know what? Like, in one hand, I'm gonna hold the pain. I'm gonna understand that there's parts of me that still need healing, and with the other hand, I'm gonna live.
Yeah.
Right? Because so many people are like, well, I need to heal this before I get there. Like, I'm like, no, do both. Like, one hand, do your healing, release the traumas, do that work. It's important. With the other hand, live. With the other hand, stand for something. Speak the fuck up. Dress how you want to dress. You know, ask yourself, what do you want professional to mean?
It can
Don't
be
just
that
follow
simple
somebody
as
else's.
dress how you want to dress.
Yeah. Or disagreeing with a friend instead of being like, yeah, I agree. When you disagree, you know?
Man, would you believe we're like almost 80 minutes in?
Wow, dude.
Great conversations, man. As I keep dialing in this setup, I would love to, like, maybe do this once a month. And this is going to make some really cool content once it's all edited and done. So I'll send that on over to you. And dude, I really appreciate you, man. I love having these conversations.
This has been so much fun, truly.
Keep holding that weirdo flag high, man, and I'll do the same on my side. Salute to you, brother.
Yes, King.
I'm gonna end the recording, and we can just close off the